Oh, hello there, wherever you're listening, however you're listening. Joining us on the Reality After Show live or on Twitter at Gabe Ortiz. So happy that you could join us for another episode of Gabe's Big Move. Really fun stuff lined up for you tonight. Can't wait to get into it. As always, the comment section is wide open for you. So go ahead, leave a comment in the comment section if you want to roast me, if you want to praise me, if you want to ask me questions for the Q&A at the end of the episode, whatever it is. Leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll do my best to be able to get to it over the course of the show tonight. So today, episode 8 of Gabe's Big Move, as I'm sure you can see in the title there, whether you're on the Reality After Show YouTube channel or you're joining us on Twitter, it's talking about the modern social threat. And this is something that we've kind of touched on in episodes in the past, but it's something I really want to hone in on because I think that some threats in the game of Survivor have remained rather stagnant, while others have been more fluid and changed. So, like the physical threat, for example, that's somebody that is always just going to be wearing the necklace, right? It's pretty cut and dry. I'd say if you want to look at any evolution in the physical threat, maybe as a camp provider in the olden days of Survivor, that was something that was much more important. Somebody that knew and could take initiative when it came to building a shelter. Somebody like, a younger Ozzy that could go out and catch a bunch of fish for everybody. And it's gives you that privilege of saying, we don't want to vote this guy out because he makes life around camp easier. Plus, he's also really good at winning immunity challenges. Now, I would say that the evolution that we've seen is that being a provider around camp isn't a very valuable thing anymore. That part of the game has fallen more to the wayside. But the core of being a physical threat, of winning challenges, hasn't changed, right? And it will never change for as long as Survivor is the show and is the game that we know it as it is today. The strategic threat, I would say, largely has stayed the same, right? It's the person that's manufacturing blind sides. It's the person that is pushing the votes going into any tribal, whether it's a blind side or not. It's the person that's laying the groundwork and spreading ideas for who they want to go home every single night. And if that person is successful at doing that, then yeah, they're the strategic threat. And I think that was the same in season 7, season 8, season 9, season 10. And I think it's the same in season 46, season 47, season 48. I don't think that that's actually changed a whole lot over the course of the show. But something that I think has seen dramatic change and dramatic evolution is what it means to be a social threat in the game of Survivor. And I think the common definition is the old definition. And I don't think it's really applicable anymore, to be totally honest with you. I think the common definition was somebody that is so well liked, somebody that is so charismatic that you can't let him get to the end because everybody will be so happy to vote for them to win $1 million and the title of Sole Survivor. And while that kind of person can still exist, does still exist in the world of Survivor, I propose that the modern Survivor player is so acutely aware of that kind of social threat that charm is not something that is very rewarded in the modern game of Survivor. Charisma is not something that is very rewarded in the modern game of Survivor. It'll get you through a pre-merge. I have no doubt about that. It'll get you to mergatory, or it'll get a merge buff around your wrist. Will probably even get you a spot on the jury if you're one of, if not the most charismatic person on your season. But I don't think that those kinds of people really have a legitimate shot of winning the game in most cases nowadays. And I don't think that that kind of social threat has enough win equity to actually be considered a long-term threat anymore. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, the reason for that is because people are so worried about them getting to the end that they get voted out. I understand the definition of the word threat. But what I'm getting at here is that the kind of social threat that actually still makes it deep into the game, that actually still wins the game, is not just this charismatic person with a silver tongue and a golden smile. I think that the modern social threat is somebody much more quiet, much more connective, and in an almost oxymoronic way, a lot less threatening than the social threat that we've grown accustomed to. I think that they are people that are great at gathering information. I think they're people that never really own the spotlight, kind of blend in with the woodwork around camp, are never winning challenges. But what makes them have so much staying power is not that they're underestimated, because the lines can get blurred between the kind of player I'm talking about and just a goat, right? But these people aren't goats. They may be perceived as goats by some, particularly earlier in the game. But what makes these people stand out and what separates them from the social threats that we've grown accustomed to is that they are players that are essential to everybody else's plans. They are players that everybody wants to use to forward their own ambitions within the game in an active way, not in a goat style way where it's just like, I just need your extra vote and that's it. Just hang out by my side. I need your vote and that's it. No, these kinds of players are the kind of people that everybody wants to have in their alliance, that everybody wants to be their number one, but there's somebody that is never actually the face of anything. They're always the number two to a number one's plan. And oftentimes they're multiple people's second in command to whatever their long-term goals are in the game. And there's somebody that nobody ever wants to see leave because everybody wants to use them to push their plans forward. And it's a fascinating kind of character. And it's a kind of character in Survivor that I think we're starting to see really gain a lot of traction and even win more often than ever before. And I think there are some proto versions of what I'm talking about in earlier seasons. Like I honestly think Suri, throwback Suri, is a great example of this. Now, I think that she was a little more charismatic than some of the other people I'm going to get into. I think that she had a bit more spotlight than some of the other people that I'm going to get into. But I think she was like the proto version of what I'm getting at. I'm sure there are plenty of other great examples. If you have any of them, throw them in the comment section right now. Who were these connective tissue type players pre-new era that everybody wanted to be their second in command and they were happy to sit there? Because I know there are more names out there than Suri. But I think also, and maybe we'll confirm or deny this on 50. I feel like a Suri of old, where she differs, is that she had too much charisma. She built too many bridges to the point where people would identify that nowadays, where they wouldn't really be able to identify that when she played her first, second time, third time. And they would say, you can't stick around. People really like you. It's one of the big reasons that Saul left the game when he did. Was because Genevieve made a great pitch of like, look, this guy is everybody's best friend. This guy is everybody's best friend. He makes everybody laugh at camp. People love to vent to him. People love learning more about his life. This is the kind of person that gets to the end and everyone says, you know what, Saul's great. Saul was one of my best friends out here. Let's give him $1 million. And everybody caught on to that and promptly voted him out, myself included. And I think that a lot of people who follow in Saul's footsteps of being this very charismatic, very nice, very warm, very open person who builds a lot of bridges with a lot of different people will find themselves suffering a similar fate as Saul, making it to a very respectable part of the game, making it through the pre-merge, making it through Mergatory, guaranteeing yourself a jury seat. Like after that, it's house money. Don't get me wrong. But I think players are so acutely aware of the threat that those social charismatic, and I think that word social is overused in this context. So I want to stick with the word charismatic. That those charismatic type players are just too tough to keep track of, too risky to let get too deep into the game. That they just got to go. And it makes total sense why. But the kind of player I'm talking about, they have this ability to, again, be a part of everyone's plans without ever actually being the creator of these plans. And another aspect that they bring to the table that I find fascinating is they are able to weaponize their own vulnerability. And that is something that I do think is very new to the game of Survivor and is one of the trademarks of the new era, is having this ability to self-deprecate, to share trauma, to become a caricature of yourself in a lot of ways. And I believe that that is part of this social game and the social threat that I'm talking about. That they are able to use their charisma and use their social ability to not stand in the spotlight and direct the game, but actually do quite the opposite, to wear it as a camouflage so that people that they're playing with don't even realize how deeply rooted they are in so many different people's games and plans, that everybody wants to bring them to the end. And this is the kind of game, this is the kind of threat that often needs to sell everything about their game at Final Tribal Council. Because if they raise their head out of the water too quickly, all of a sudden, people realize the angle that they've been playing. And a huge target that was non-existent gets put on their back. So you really need to see these kinds of players win at Final Tribal Council. And there are two great examples that exist in the new era of the kind of player I'm talking about. Both winners. Mike Gabler and Marianne. I mean, these are like the textbook examples of the kind of social threats that I'm talking about. And I would probably say Marianne fits the bill a little bit more than Gabler does. I think Gabler was a bit louder in the way that he played. But even still, he was part of so many different people's plans. He has what I think was a great moment at Final Tribal where he was like, hey, if you were part of this alliance, raise your hand. If you were part of this alliance, raise your hand. If you were part of this alliance, raise your hand. Yeah. Many of you only raised your hands for one of those alliances that I named. I could raise my hand for all three. And it's like, well, that's genius. But that's something that you can only sell at Final Tribal Council. He weaponized his vulnerability by playing up this kooky old man. And how kooky he is in real life, I can't say. I've never met the guy. But he absolutely played up this idea of like, look, I'm magnitudes older than almost everybody out here. I got a kind of crazy goatee beard going on. I call myself the Alec Gabler. Like, I'm going to play up this kookiness so that I can camouflage myself within this cast of people on this island. And it worked to perfection. And I don't know a lot of the behind the scenes intricacies of what the jury was thinking and saying at Ponderosa. I've heard stories here and there, but I've never heard anything concrete enough to make a statement on it. But I know a lot of people went into that final tribal not expecting to vote for Gabler. And I think a lot of what he said at that final tribal painted a picture for many people on that jury that put a lot of missing puzzle pieces into place of like, how did this guy actually get here? What argument does he truly have to win? And when Gabler laid it all out for everybody, it was like, oh my God, not only is he going to win, but he's going to win in pretty overwhelming fashion. Damn near had a perfect game. And to piggyback off that point, he never had a vote cast against him. I mean, he went into that final tribal because he was a part of so many people's plans, because he weaponized his vulnerability in such an intentional and active way. Nobody ever wanted to vote for him because losing Gabler meant that pulling off whatever your next move was going to be a hell of a lot harder than it would be if Gabler was there. And everybody was thinking that. Marianne, the same exact deal. Weaponized her vulnerability of being this kind of socially awkward, over the top, hyper spazzy younger person on this season, and was doing that very actively and very intentionally. I want to camouflage myself behind my vulnerabilities. I want people out here to think that I'm just happy to be here. I'm along for the ride. I'm kind of awkward. I don't really get along or click with people socially. So make me part of your plans. And Marianne was part of everybody's plans throughout 42. And she gets to the end, going into a final tribal where it seemed like Mike Turner had it won. And all of a sudden, she reveals how active and intentional her gameplay was, how she was a part of so many people's plans, how if this person left at this round, I was still a part of these people's plans. And if one of them left in the next round, I was a part of these people's plans. And she was never pushing votes. She was never really organizing blindsides. But you can be damn sure that the people who were needed Marianne in the game to pull it off. And you have these strategic threats and these more traditional social threats that you allow to assume that pedestal and say, hey, yeah, this is your move. What do you need me to do to make it happen? Who do you need me to talk to? Whose votes do I need to go whip? Let's make this happen. Wow, you pulled off a great move last night. You know that? And those are the people that always end up getting voted out. And so I would like to see the conversation around what is a social threat start to evolve and change a little bit. Because I don't think it's these used car salesmen, charismatic, smooth talkers that everybody likes and is everybody's best friend. I don't think Marianne was a lot of people's best friend on 42. I don't think Mike Gabler was a lot of people's best friend on 43. In fact, I think a lot of people were probably turned off by their presence, turned off by their conversation, turned off by their behavior. But what makes it so genius and makes it so compelling, and in those two cases, makes it a winning game, is the fact that it was intentional and it was active. And I'll keep using those words because that's what makes it different than just being a goat that people want to use to have an extra vote in whatever tribal they're going into. It's like, no, I want you to think I'm kind of awkward. I want you to think I'm kooky. I want you to think all these things. Because not only does it keep my threat level as low as possible, but it will also make the surprise of how aware I was of everything going on and how aware I was of what my perception was and how I was manipulating that perception amongst the cast that much more surprising when I'm sitting at final tribal council and I'm pitching that case to you on the jury. This new era social threat, it's something that I don't think we've truly seen before in this refined of a form. And I think we're going to continue to see it more and more as these new era seasons come and go. I think another great example of this is Julie Alley from 45, Mama J. I think she's a great example of this. Somebody who really played into that mom, therapist, peacemaker type role. And nobody was ever targeting Julie until the very end of the game. Until the very end of the game, Julie was never somebody's name, was never the name that somebody was throwing out. And she was involved in just about every major move that season saw, season 45. But she was never seen as the face of it. She was never seen as the figurehead. She was never seen as the leader of those moves. And it wasn't until the very end of the game that everybody kind of woke up and was like, oh my God, Julie's going to win if she's sitting at the end with any of us. Because she's going to take the mask off of being this pleasant mom, shoulder to cry on, peacemaker amongst the tribe and say, I was playing all of you guys. None of you wanted to vote me out, not because I was your goat, but because you needed me to push your plans forward. You needed me to get the votes that you needed to vote out whoever you wanted to vote out. And I camouflage my threat level through this social perception that I put out to everybody in our cast. And it's genius. And it worked great until you get to the very end and the bottleneck becomes so skinny that sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And that is this new era social threat that I'm talking about. Another great example. And let me know in the comments if you think I'm wrong about any of these. Another great example from my personal experience, that player on our season was Teeny. And I know that Teeny's read of the game stuttered towards the end. But the reason that Teeny never got any votes in the game, other than a hinky vote from Kyle when he went home, wasn't because Teeny was a goat for anybody. It's because Teeny was part of everybody's plans. Teeny was everybody's number one on the island at one point or another. And because everybody saw Teeny as a gateway to further their ambitions. And Teeny camouflaged their threat level behind this, oh, I'm just having fun and I'm getting drunk on wine and I'm just this small person. Who could I ever hurt? What could I ever do? I'm just happy to be here and I'm cracking jokes and I'm just figuring it all out as I go. And there are some nuggets of truth within that. But it was absolutely played up to camouflage the real, genuine threat that Teeny had to go win the game. Would he have won against Rachel? I mean, maybe not, probably not. But there were many different permutations of the final 9, 10, 11 people that Teeny absolutely could have won it. And if Teeny wins fire against Sam, who knows how that final tribal goes? Because I know Teeny's going to give a stellar speech that is going to alter the perception that the jury has of him in that moment. Because Teeny's going to be able to say, look, like this kind of falling all over myself, fun-loving person that you had out here the entire time, there was a lot more going on than you originally thought. I was your number one. I was your number one. I was your number one. I was part of your plans. I was part of your plans. This vote I was in on. This vote I was in on. And it's a remarkably dangerous player to have in the game, not only because they're the most primed to have the best final tribal council of anybody in the game, but almost more importantly, because they are so difficult to identify. And that's what makes them truly special. Is that you really need to have a deep read of the game you're playing and a deep understanding of the cast you're playing with to not just identify this person and want to take them out, but to also whip the votes among the other players to get them out. That's what makes these people very difficult to maneuver. That's what makes them special. And I look at the future of Survivor. I look at the future of the new era. And I really wonder if other players will catch on to what I'm talking about here. Because I think this is a very real thing. I think this is something that is a new burgeoning, I don't want to say epidemic because that makes it sound kind of negative. I mean, I guess if you're playing against this person, it is an epidemic to you. But these players that can camouflage themselves by weaponizing their vulnerability, that can set themselves up to have the best possible final tribal council and can constantly be in everyone's alliance and be in everyone's plans without ever really being outed because nobody wants to lose what these people bring to their alliance, to their ambitions. I would also, to a certain degree, put Sam Phelan in this category from 47. He didn't start the game this way, but I certainly think that this is where he grew over the course of the game, was that he was sent to the bottom after Sierra got voted out. What he thought was his power duo was broken up. What he thought was his read on the game was completely obliterated, being completely left out of a vote and being blindsided through it. And then what he did, which was something that I have never seen in Survivor, that worked like a charm, accomplished everything that he needed to accomplish to reach the finale, was he weaponized his honesty. And it's something that he's talked about a whole lot. If you listen to his extra press or his deep dives or any of the appearances he makes on any of these shows, he weaponized his honesty in a way that made him indispensable to the people he was working with. He just started telling people what was going on. Whether it came from a place of, look, I got nothing left to lose, whether it came from a place of, I know that this is the most valuable currency I have in the game right now, being on the bottom, whatever the motivation may have been. It was a fascinating development in Sam's game and a fascinating development for the game of Survivor as a whole. Weaponizing his vulnerability through honesty. People coming up to Sam being like, hey, what's going on here? What do you think of this? And him just flatly telling them the truth without any need for poking or prodding or pulling teeth out to figure out what his real intentions are, saying, look, this is what I heard from this person, and this is what I want to do with that information. So what are we going to do about it? And then all of a sudden, Sam becomes somebody that people really want to work with. Like a Genevieve, like a Andy, despite their already existing strong connection from being together since day one, because it's like, I don't really have to worry too much about this guy snaking me because he's just being honest with me. So I can cross him off the list of people that I think might be gunning for me because I know that he's just told me who he's gunning for. And, in his honesty, it wasn't me. And that is a way to weaponize your vulnerability, saying like, look, I don't have anything to lose here. I'm on the bottom. I lost my number one ally. Doesn't really feel like I can trust the allies that I have. So like, here's the state of my game right now. All I can do is be honest with you. And that lowers his threat level so much because then to other people, the perception is that he's not really playing the game, or more so, he's just looking for any home right now that exists. Anybody that will take him in, he'll be indebted to them and he'll work with them. But in reality, if you're doing that to everybody, then everybody wants to work with you. And suddenly you're a part of everybody's plans. And not just a part, but an indispensable part of everybody's plans. And it was a fascinating approach, a fascinating reaction to where he was at that point in the game, that mid-merge point in the game when things started to look really bleak for Sam. The way he turned them around was by weaponizing his vulnerability and weaponizing his honesty. And then he went and had a fantastic final tribal council, had a better one than Rachel. It's like that's the kind of player that I'm talking about here, that people who go on the show in the future are really going to have to be looking out for, are really going to have to try to find a way to identify these players and be able to tell the other people they're playing with, like, hey, this person is doing this right now. You cannot fall under their spell. You cannot fall into their trap. And that's a hard sell, because if people don't see the same thing that you see, all of a sudden you become the target. All of a sudden you become the person that's causing problems and throwing wrenches into people's plans. And I cannot wait to see how future seasons try and deal with this. And if they don't, these players will continue to win. Or they'll at least continue to go deep into the game and go far and collect scalps along the way of more strategic or physical or charismatic players. I have no doubts about that. We've seen it happen now for the past 4 or 5 seasons. So I feel like the track record is there. I feel like the evidence is there. So now we just wait and see if these players keep doing really well or if people wake up and start taking them out. And that is what I think the new era social threat really is. I'll reiterate, it's not the person who's shaking hands and telling stories with everybody and makes everybody laugh like that. That's the Saul type player. And those players are great. And I think that they often, as they should, make it through the pre-merge, make it to the jury spot, deep into the game, something you have to be a good Survivor player to do. But I don't think the space really exists anymore for those kinds of players to go to the finale, to go win the game. Because cat's out of the bag on them. It's not like it used to be where it's like, oh, this person's great. Well, let's just keep them around. Like, no. The meta of Survivor, which is a term I kind of hate using, but the meta of Survivor has evolved past those kinds of players going and winning for the most part. There are exceptions to that. I would say the biggest exception to that, and to answer Mex's question here, who's the most charismatic winner of the new era? The most charismatic winner within their season, I would probably say, is Kenzie from 46. I think that was somebody who was kind of everybody's best friend, was everybody's shoulder to cry on, was somebody that everybody just liked. And for, I'm sure, a multitude of reasons went into how the final tribal went. But I think a big motivation for a lot of people was like, look, I just got along with this person really well. I like this person a lot. They were very comforting. They were very warm. They were very open. They were very charismatic. And that's why I want to give them the win. 46, I think, is also a season that you can't really compare to a lot of other seasons as Survivor, for better or for worse. But this new era type social player, the Gablers, the Mary Anns, the Sams, the Teenies, they're changing the game in a really interesting, fascinating way. And, if other people pick up on this and start to go in with like the intention of basing their games off of how these more recent winners and finalists have played, like I think we could see the entire outlook of how Survivor is played and won completely overhauled over the next 3 or 4 years. I really do, and that's exciting to me. I think it will be for the best. I think it'll make things just blow the doors open of what's possible in a game of Survivor. So I'll tell you what, we'll leave it right there. Shorter episode tonight. We'll be back next week with the hour-long episodes. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in, whether you were on X. Follow me at Gabe Ortiz on Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe to the Reality After Show YouTube channel. Go ahead, give us a like, give us a comment on this video. Put those alerts on. Helps with the algorithm. Helps my stuff get out there more for more people. So if you enjoy this, you want to see more of it, you want to see more complex content, you want to see more developed content, I need it to get out there. So help a brother out with the algorithm a little bit. Like, subscribe, comment, alerts on, follow at Gabe Ortiz, Instagram, Twitter. We'll talk to you next week.